So my name is Ignacia, this is Kuba, this is Will, and we're all designers at the Government Digital Service in the UK. This is GDS, and we are part of the Cabinet Office. So today we are here to talk about how to collaborate across organizational boundaries, specifically on end-to-end services. So this session has been informed by a piece of work that we've been developing in the past 2 years around what we've called service communities. I'll explain a little bit more about that later. And we hope that this is an interactive session, so we'll do a little bit of chat at the beginning, but we will also get you to participate, and hopefully you will leave the session with something to take back to your organizations as well. So before we actually go into what it takes to collaborate across organizational boundaries, we need to understand why is this important in the first place? Why do we need to collaborate, or why should we be collaborating? And what are the problems that we're actually trying to seek to solve through collaboration? So this is the problem for us in the UK government. So the structure of government isn't really designed to meet user needs. Because what users are trying to do, the tasks they are trying to do, may involve multiple organizations that they'll have to interact with. So for example, users are really trying to do this. They're trying to learn to drive, to export animals, to start a business. They don't see individual tasks, they see complete end-to-end journeys, which we've named them like these. So these user-defined services like start a business, as I said before, span multiple departments across the public sector and government. So for example, in starting a business, we've seen there are around 10 to 15 organizations in the UK that design and deliver individual bits of transactions and services of that end-to-end journey. And those people in those departments are not really talking to each other. They're not connected. So this really generates a disjointed experience for citizens, because they will have to be reaching out and figuring out which department to interact with, and they'll be asked multiple times for the same personal information over and over again. So this is not only disjointed for users, but it's also creating a lot of pain for government, a lot of inefficiency and waste and duplication. And so this is a quote of one of the community facilitators that kind of summarizes a bit the environment and what we're working in. So it's disjointed. No one knows what the other person is doing, and it's a problem across government, which means users are not getting the right outcomes. So actually, users are dropping off the service that government is providing and not actually completing what they're set to do. So to address this problem of siloed working in government, and to get people to think more about the end-to-end services, we've came up with this approach. So this is service communities. And you might ask what service communities is. So a service community is a network of people from across the public sector who work together to design and deliver this end-to-end journey. So with this, we try to get people from all the professions. We try to bring people from policy to operations to delivery and digital teams together in a room to think about, for example, starting a business. And we also have different parts of the public sector. We have central government, local government, we have the NHS involved as well. So we have a holistic view of all the things that need to happen in order for someone, for example, to start a business or import something. Today we have 6 live communities. They have almost more than 200 community members, and they sometimes are biggest as 15 organizations per community. So this is really big. And these are some of the ones that we have. So start a business, employ someone. There's one around what to do when someone dies. So for example, this is a really stressful situation for users, and they have to interact with government to do all sorts of stuff to let government know that someone has passed away. So how are we actually helping bring those departments together to improve that experience for users? In GDS, we started by leading and piloting 3 service communities, so the top 3. But in time, we were thinking, how do we make this approach scalable? How do we actually enable people to set up their own service communities? So the following 4 other service communities have been set up and initiated by other bits of government with tools and guidance that we've provided. So actually, in reality, the service community, what it does is provides a framework for collaboration that makes it easier to solve common challenges. With frameworks, I mean tools, guidance, patterns, and support that we provide to the public sector in general to kind of help people identify common challenges that motivate collaboration. So we've been working a lot to enable this. And these tools help service communities to build a common understanding about what is the end-to-end journey that they're working on and who are their users across the organizations. So service communities have been working together to remove blockers to communication, for example, by getting key stakeholders in the room, by sharing knowledge and therefore reducing some of the duplication of work, and also by improving journeys on gov.uk, where citizens go and interact with government. So just to give you an example of one way in which service communities build a common understanding is by mapping together as a community what we called a service landscape. So this kind of map is something really useful to get people from policy, operation, and all the different departments to kind of map what do they provide under starting a business, for example. So each organization would map all the transactions, all the guidance, all the contact centers that they deliver within the journey of starting a business. And this is really useful because it creates a collective and common truth within the community. You're able to spot where does your organization fit within the wider context, in which bit of the journey of the user, and also what happens and which organizations are involved before and after what you provide. This is a really useful tool to spot duplication, but also to spot gaps and opportunities for the community to come together and focus on specific common challenges to improve for users. And another thing that service communities are doing are getting together to map and produce what we call step-by-steps. So step-by-step is a way of presenting end-to-end journeys on gov.uk, which helps the users navigate easily through content and transactions in this step-by-step way. So it makes it easier for users to understand what they have to do, how long the process is, and they don't have to figure out which department they have to interact with. But this is also really useful from a community perspective because it helps organizations understand what step are they within the process? Who should they be speaking to that might be affecting the work that comes before them or after them? So this is also a really useful tool to get people together to think about this end-to-end service. And then finally, these are some other things that service communities has been able to do. So again, we talk about reusing other organization platforms or building on existing services. Like why should each organization be building a payment system or should be solving the same problem that in the end we're all working together to solve? Communities have also been sharing research. So not every department or organization has the capability to conduct user research. So some bigger departments have opened up their research labs and research sessions and invited community members to input, to ask questions, to feed into the discussion guides, and to reuse the insights because in the end, the users are the same across the organization. So this has been really valuable for communities as well. And we've also had participants that have been able to go back to their organizations and create changes to their transformation strategies to stress how important it is to actually collaborate across organizational boundaries. So actually ingraining it within their transformation strategies. So this is only some of the stuff that communities have been able to do. So collaboration is great, we know we should all do it, we think it's a brilliant idea, but it is difficult. So the big question here is how do we actually get started? How do we find the right problems that trigger motivation to get people to actually collaborate, take the time and take the effort to do it? And how do we make sure that we get the right people in the room to take this work forward? So this is really what it's about today. So we've been looking at, in these past 2 years, what are the good grounds to set up collaboration to be sustainable within time. So how do we set up really well at the beginning so it becomes more fruitful within time? So we're going to do a little activity with you that Kuba and Will are going to take you through. We're going to talk about common problems that we might be facing that collaboration can help you. We'll be identifying potential people that we will need to work with. And then finally, we'll also understand what is it that our users are trying to do? What is the service that we're providing? How do we name those services? So hopefully by the end of the session, you can take something away with you to go back to your organization and say, I've identified common problems that really collaboration can solve. So I'm gonna hand over to Kuba now.
Cool. Thanks, Ignacia. So we're going to run you through the sort of things that we would do with people in the UK government who say, I want to collaborate, I want a service community. And we've kind of iterated this process over our period of running this stuff. And what we found to be most effective is to start by talking to people about the problems they're actually trying to solve. So why are you in this room? Why do you want to collaborate? Because we've spoken earlier about the structure of government not meeting user needs, not being designed correctly to kind of be user-centered. And whilst that is true, and that is absolutely super important to talk about, it's nobody's job to fix that, apart from maybe us in the center. So if you start going to, within your departments, talking to people about how the structure doesn't work, and we need service designed to fix it, no one's going to be interested because it's not within your day job to do that. So what you really need to do is find real kind of tangible issues that you think you need to work with others to address. And it's not just about finding the problem, it's also about finding a problem that you explicitly need to work with others to address. It needs to kind of benefit from bringing people together. So we did lots of research with a number of kind of people in government around this. So like, why do you want to work with others? And some of the things we heard include this. So this is a person from the National Health Service telling us that repetition is a massive problem. So there will be so many instances where a user, a patient, is being asked to do the same thing, to repeat their kind of own health history to numerous kind of parties. And that's because it's so disjointed. So this is a really kind of good thing to group people around because it's clear, it will be recognized by a number of organizations, and it affects end users. And this is the sort of stuff that we keep hearing about. There's a lot of kind of patterns in the problems that people tell us about that they tend to result in, for example, asking a user to do a thing twice. So you have to give the government your passport number 2 times at separate parts of the same process, where you should really expect the government to know that. We see failure demand quite often, so that would be citizens calling up call centers because they're unable to do a thing because it doesn't make any sense, because it crosses the fundamental boundaries. We also see policy teams not talking to delivery teams, which result in policies that cannot really be delivered and various kind of other kinds of issues of that sort. So yeah, we think that to initiate a community, it is really good to think about the particular problems you identified and how they impact others. And I think broadly, it's worth saying that the way we use that stuff is that we use problems to focus collaboration. We use it to kind of get people interested, to hook them in, and to give you something to work on together. And we also use the idea of a service, like start a business, like get health benefits, learn to drive, and that's a really good tool to kind of define boundaries of collaboration and to keep it focused on users. And that's kind of really important because it kind of sets it apart from maybe other forms of collaboration in government, like various kind of working groups and different kinds of initiatives, which are not necessarily focused on users, and are perhaps a little bit more finite. So they have a start point and an end point. Whereas a service community should be around for as long as the government provides the service, which is probably for a very long time. So this is the question we want you to think about. This is question number 1, which is what problems are affecting your work that you think collaboration can solve? What we often see is that people kind of come to us with problems that are quite kind of surface level, like for example, I don't know, a particular page in a process doesn't work, it doesn't make sense. And what we do in that instance is we ask them why. Like, why is that a thing? What is caused by it? What has caused this particular problem? So yeah, you have those sheets that have 5 whys on it, and that's if you kind of stuck writing down a problem, you may find running through that exercise useful. So we're gonna give you, I think, 3 to 4 minutes to do this individually. Then we're gonna sound a gong, at which point stop writing, and we'll ask you to start talking in your groups and then share more widely. Let's get to it.
Which I had to test, and then I said, is it now? Which is that 2? Yes, there's 2. If we have more solid on that, the cooperation will be much more easy.
Yeah. So who do you want to collaborate with? You kind of captured problems that you think you need to work with others to address. Now we're going to think about who are those people that you need to talk to. And you can think about this on all levels. You can think about individuals. So are there particular people somewhere in the organization or outside of it that you really, really want to work with, but you haven't yet kind of managed them because you didn't have a good kind of stake or reason really to work with them? Is it teams? So are there particular teams that you know are a part of your kind of wider service that you're really struggling to access because you're also busy? Is it different professions? So for example, the issue of policy, networking of delivery, or the issue of service designers not being considered higher upstream. Do you need to work with a particular profession to solve this problem? Is it organizations, whether that's kind of different parts of your government, or it's kind of different suppliers, or kind of charities, or all these kinds of things that are probably involved in the delivery or the service that you work on. And all kinds of other levels that you can think of other kind of people that you really want to collaborate with. So the way that we kind of identify that very often is to think about all the steps involved in a user using your service. For example, when you run a business and you want to employ someone, there is a number of steps involved in doing that, and each of these steps is a different part of the UK government. Therefore, you should probably start by talking to the organizations in this step. Before yours and after yours, or kind of bring everyone together to think more broadly.
So what we've done in 45 minutes is like a condensed version of 2 years of our research and back and forth in the UK government with a number of different communities and countless interviews with both service teams, management, and active communities that are running. And we know that condensing it into 45 minutes is quite challenging, but we think this is just a start. By identifying the problems that you're working on and kind of extracting those out to like who else has those problems as well, who are the people that are dealing with that, and then how do we frame this in a way that other people will respond to it, is a good way to go back to your organization and say, look, I think this is a way for collaboration. So what we've kind of done is created a very quick 5-step program. So like I said, for the first one is you identify the problems, you identify who can help solve those problems, get in touch with them and propose this way of working, agree on what you want to do and how you want to achieve it, and then plan activities and then do this forever and ever and ever. Because you think when you frame it from a user's perspective, collaboration should exist in perpetuity as long as government is providing that service. Where so often in government, collaboration is time boxed. You have 1 month and you have to solve all of government's problems, and it never really works, and then that same working group gets set up the next day. So what we need to do is like if you're actively working on those services and at that service level and you need to bring these people, this is a good way to frame it so that people see that these services are ongoing and that we need to kind of share information. So what we've essentially done is got you to create a proposal to approach people and suggest working to improve the wider service for end users for the thing that you've identified. This is very difficult to do, and there's no single way to do it. Every government approaches things in different ways. Every government has different challenges. But I've never met anyone that says collaboration is a bad thing. When you talk to people, they always say, yeah, I like to collaborate. But then when you ask them, do you do it? It comes down at the bottom list of every Trello board that they have. So this is an easy way to make collaboration happen, and is kind of like an easy thing just to propose a coffee, have a meeting, and then build on that. And what we've done to kind of encourage this is we've written about it. So if you go onto GDS's blog, we've written about all the different work we've done with communities. If you look at the hashtag service communities, we usually tag all of our content that we publish. And then if your bosses and your bosses' bosses still struggle to believe that this form of collaboration is challenging, we've even published it. So GDS has a service manual where we publish guidance on how to approach things in design, research, and so on. And we've published our approach to working across organizational boundaries. So you can say it exists online. And this generally works. So the next thing is just to go and collaborate. And that's it. Thank you.